Welcome in for a not quite live run-up show, getting ready for Atlanta and Chicago. My name's Jason Longshore. You're going to hear from Kelly Francis in just a bit. We've got all your pregame coverage getting ready for the home opener tomorrow night at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Chicago Fire are the visitors. Your Atlanta United get to welcome a larger number of fans than they have seen in a long time tomorrow night to the Benz. Kelly's got you covered on what game day will be like, and we'll hear from her in just a second. I'll get you ready with tactics and some of the individuals to look at and some of the things we learned about both of these teams in week number 1. If you're not going to be at the Benz tomorrow, you can consume this game in a number of different ways. Bally Sports South has your TV coverage, the former Fox Sports South, if you're wondering about the name. Pregame starts at 7:30. Kickoff is going to be at 8:08. You can actually find those kickoff times on the MLS website now. It's amazing. And a half hour of postgame coverage on Bally's Sports South. For radio, Mike Conti and I will be on 92.9 The Game starting at 7:30. We'll have an hour of postgame coverage. The full-time report will follow the final whistle for an hour. You'll get to hear from Gabriel Heinze's postgame media availability, a player or two possibly, depending on availability. And you can also listen to the radio coverage on the Odyssey app, the former radio.com app. Again, another name change. It's the nature of 2021, I guess. The Atlanta United app has our game audio as well, and you can also listen on SiriusXM, channel 157, SiriusXM FC, the great soccer channel that covers MLS and covers the game worldwide. We'll get into all the particulars on the field here in just a minute, but you got to hear from my co-host, Kelly Francis, who is a little bit excited about tomorrow.
Hello, Five Stripe fam. It's Kelly Francis from the Run-Up. I'm so sorry we could not make the Run-Up this evening. Some complications got in the way, as life tends to happen sometimes. But I wanted to take this moment to talk to each and every one of you who are going to either be coming to the game tomorrow, watching the game tomorrow from a friend's house or a local restaurant, or just watching at home in your pajamas, maybe eating ice cream and drinking beer and relaxing while also screaming your lungs out. I wanted to talk to each and every one of you and just tell you how absolutely excited I am to be back in the stadium and to be back with all of you. Five Stripes are undoubtedly our nickname, as is the 17s. It's a legacy that we've carried, obviously, since 2017, but it means something a little bit different now. I've been thinking a lot over this past year with being away in my own apartment, void of friends and other fans of Atlanta United, and it's felt lonely and it's felt distant. And there's something about being able to go to the game tomorrow in person, be it separated by 6 feet, still being in the same building as all the other Five Stripers that are there. It's a feeling of joy. It's a feeling of relief. It's a feeling of home. Going back to the Benz tomorrow feels like home. And it's something I never thought that I'd ever feel again. I know that sounds very dramatic, but it's one of those feelings that you get when something like this that happens, a global pandemic that's completely unplannable, you don't really know how life's gonna play out. I didn't know when all of this started if we'd be back in the Benz in 3 months, if we'd be back in the Benz in a year, if we'd be back in the Benz in 3 years. It was a purgatory of pain, of waiting to be able to feel the same sort of familiarity that I felt when I went to games on match day before this all started. Now, I'm not saying me going tomorrow is going to feel any bit close to what it used to feel like, but there's a small door that's going to open in my heart that's going to make me feel like we are one bit closer to being together fully again. And when I mean fully, I mean full stadium open, 82,000 screaming fans. And I really hope we can get there. Because there's nothing that's more beautiful in this city to me than to be standing with 75 plus thousand of your closest friends, watching the team that you love so much raise a trophy over their heads. We're going to get there. Whether it's this year, next year, or a few years past that, we are too great to be defeated. We're too great to not be able to climb to new heights. And us as fans are too united to ever feel and succumb to the separation that was 2020. This feels like a lot of hyperbole and just me trying to talk to you, but I wanted to say this. I am undoubtedly and excruciatingly excited to be in the Benz tomorrow. And if you can't be there, then that's okay. I know that you'll be rooting on wherever you are. So, from the bottom of my heart, I want you all to unite and conquer, and let's go. Five Stripe fam for life. I'm so excited!
Hey, I'm excited too about this game tomorrow. I don't know what it's going to feel like when you hear a roar from an Atlanta crowd for the first time in a while. We had fans in the building in the fall. It was a much smaller number, and it was better than nothing, but it was still kind of weird. This is going to be closer to normal. Not quite. It's half of what the soccer configuration is, so around 20,000 people. But I'm assuming there will be some very loud noises coming out of the stands at the Benz tomorrow night. And I honestly cannot wait. I have to try to keep it together on the radio call for that one. All right, couple of things from week one in MLS that you need to know about Atlanta and Chicago. Each team has a player on the MLS Team of the Week. Miles Robinson for Atlanta, Robert Beric for Chicago. Some potential injury issues for the Fire. Elliot Collier and Carlos Terran. They are back training with the team. They're day-to-day, according to manager Rafael Wicki. Ignacio Aliseda came off the bench last week, but he is still listed as questionable with a left thigh injury. Assuming he might not be able to go 90, we'll just have to see if he's able to start or not for Chicago. Gaston Jimenez is a very familiar face to Gabriel Heinze, played for him for a couple of years at Vélez Sarsfield. I think really elevated his game under the tutelage of Gabriel Heinze. He talked about it with the media this week. You know, he's not putting any extra feeling into this game. He doesn't think there's any advantages to knowing how Gabriel Heinze teams play. He said that Heinze knows how he plays, so, you know, it's probably a wash. Rafael Wicki said that they had done all their due diligence. They had a pretty good idea of what the game plan would be from Atlanta coming in. They did talk to Gaston about his impressions of how a Gabriel Heinze team would play, and Wicki said that they were pretty much on the same page, so not really giving anything away. Now, one factor in this that is a little unique, and it is still because we're in the midst of a pandemic, MLS right now is requiring same-day travel for teams who are flying 3 hours or less. Chicago to Atlanta in the air is less than 3 hours. So Chicago will fly to Atlanta on game day, play, and then fly back. Does that factor in late in the match? Does it potentially factor into Rafael Wicki's lineup selection or substitution patterns? is the Fire going to struggle to close out the game because of that same day travel and a fairly long flight coming in? It's less than 3 hours, but it's still not a short one. So I'm really curious to see how the last 30 minutes of the match tomorrow look. Luka Stojanovic was the revelation for me watching Chicago in Week 1 against New England. We didn't get to see him much last year. There was a lot of hype about him coming into the MLS's back tournament. He got hurt. He got a goal in Week 1, but I think he completes that midfield. I talked about it last year a lot. Alvaro Madron, Gaston Jimenez, two great holding midfielders, but it felt incomplete at times last year. Fabian Herbers did a good job coming in and playing more like a second forward underneath Beric than a central attacking midfielder. Stojanovic is the player that fits and completes that triangle. That midfield trio is as good as you'll find in Major League Soccer. Stojanovic is a player to absolutely make sure he is accounted for tomorrow, and he's going to test Santiago Sosa in a big way. Chicago gave up 2 goals after going up 2-0 in this match last week. 5th minute, 11th minute, they scored. Beric and Stojanovic. The goal from Beric is one of the best in MLS in the last couple of years in terms of a team goal. About 12 passes strung together. Tap in for Beric. It's a brilliant goal. Problem is, Chicago conceded in the 14th and the 27th minutes, and it ended 2-2. Both goals came up off set pieces. First one was a corner, and Adam Buxa had a very easy header, a clean header. Nobody really went up with him. The second goal was off a throw-in, and that's completely unacceptable if you're Raphael Wicke and the Chicago Fire. It's a problem, and I thought Ruben Tish of Hot Time in Old Town, the Chicago SB Nation blog that covers the Fire, kind of nailed it. His quote afterwards, after the Revolution game was, "I said in the preview for the first game that the Fire needs to play with max effort for 90 minutes because they're not quick or athletic enough to be able to recover lapses like this. For this to happen not once, but twice on largely the same type of play is inexcusable and something that needs to be corrected quickly." Ruben's correct on the quick and athletic part. This is a very good Chicago Fire team. They're very technical. You can see the kind of player that Raphael Wicke wants. You can see the kind of player that the Fire are looking to acquire. They're looking for technical players. They're not looking for speed. We've had this conversation about Atlanta United and who they look to acquire. They also look for technical players. Speed is also a very big element of Atlanta United's recruitment from day one. And you look at the team that we could see tomorrow. On the flanks, Marcelino Moreno, Jake Mulroney, Jurgen Damm, all possibilities, all very fast. Machop Chol, we saw off the bench on the opening weekend, also very fast. Ezequiel Barco, good wheels on him. You've got a lot of speed in this Atlanta United team. Brooks Lennon, George Bello, attacking from deep. You have a lot of speed. If Chicago has mental lapses or gets tired, they're going to struggle with that pace of Atlanta United. It is absolutely something to keep in mind. The average age of the starting 11 for Chicago last week was 29 years old. Atlanta's lineups have been very young this season, even with the inclusion of Brad Kazan in his mid-30s and Lisandro Lopez at 38. If you have Joseph Martinez start, for example, this is going to be an Atlanta team that the average age could be 4 to 5 years younger than the Chicago Fire. Again, when you start talking about travel the same day, you talk about advantages in pace, these are things that could come into focus late in a match. Chicago outshot New England last week 20-13, 7 shots on target to their 5. XG was about the same. There was a point G difference for Chicago, or a 0.3 difference for Chicago. So not a huge difference in the way these two teams lined up and played out. Chicago was a little more active defensively, but New England won the duels by a fairly large amount. A couple things about Chicago since 2020 that jumped out to me. They scored 21 of their 33 goals in 2020 in the first half. They scored both of their goals in the first half against New England. This is a team that starts fast, doesn't finish so well. And I know I keep beating that drum, but you got to keep that in mind about tomorrow. If Atlanta can handle the early onslaught from Chicago, they should be in a position to finish better than the Chicago Fire do. Back to that. Chicago last year conceded 21 of 39 goals in the last 30 minutes. They didn't do that in the opener. They conceded both goals in the first half. But these things start to add up, and you start to create a little bit of a profile of who the Chicago Fire can be. Even with that lineup, that starting lineup being older, they have a lot of young players on the roster, a lot of young homegrowns, very young homegrowns, who we haven't seen much of yet. Don't think we're going to start to see them here on the road in this one, but keep an eye on Chicago over the next couple of years as Raphael Wickey's trying to bring through a new generation. The Fire have done a poor job, honestly, in developing their own talent. Let's see how they do with this current group of homegrowns that need time somewhere. If not in Chicago, they need time somewhere in the USL Championship or USL League One. The history of this series, 4 wins for Atlanta, 3 wins for Chicago. There's never been a draw between Atlanta and Chicago. This is all regular season play, by the way. Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz in MLS regular season play, 3 out of 3. They've won all 3 of them. They've scored 8 goals. They only conceded 1. The Fire do have a U.S. Open Cup win at the Benz in 2018. Last 2 meetings were in Chicago. Chicago's won the last 2 meetings. They won in Bridgeview in 2019 in a game that we don't talk about anymore because it was very bad and trying to block it out of my memory. And in the game last year, that was also very bad. You had a couple of big mistakes that cost Atlanta, and they lost 2-0 at Soldier Field. Career, Joseph Martinez has 5 goals and 1 assist against the Fire in 5 games. Ezequiel Barco, Cubo Torres also have a goal against Chicago. On the flip side, Francisco Calvo, Robert Baric each have 1 goal against Atlanta. Calvo has an assist. Gaston Jimenez has an assist against Atlanta. Bobby Shuttleworth has played against Atlanta 1 time. That was last year. He got a clean sheet. If he plays tomorrow night, it will be his 200th regular season match in MLS. Alan Chapman will be the referee, one of the best in the league. VAR will be Alejandro Mariscal. A couple more things on Raphael Wickey. This is his 2nd year in Chicago. He really made a name for himself at FC Basel in his native Switzerland. Started with the youth teams, took over the first team in 2017. He took Basel to the round of 16 in the Champions League, the best ever performance for a Swiss team. Took over the U.S. men's national team U17s in March of 2019. And it didn't really go so well for him with the U17s. Took the team to the World Cup later that year in 2019. George Bello was part of that group. It was a disappointing group stage, and the U.S. was knocked out then. Wickey then moved on to Chicago. As a player, he had 75 caps for the Swiss national team. He played in the 2006 World Cup. He also played in the European Championships of 1996 and 2004. Expected lineup for the Fire, Bobby Shuttleworth should be in goal. They don't really like to build up out of the back using the goalkeeper very much. He only had 17 passes last week. Almost all of them were long, 8 of 11 on long passes. He made 3 saves in the 2-2 draw. This was his 2nd season in Chicago. He's played in New England. He's played in Minnesota. He played for the Sacramento Republic in the USL Championship as well. Kenneth Kronholm would be competing for that starting spot, but he has not recovered from ACL surgery just yet. That ended his 2020 season a little early. Left back, Jonathan Bornstein, the 36-year-old former U.S. men's national team player, loves to get forward. One of those converted attackers into an outside back that has thrived in that role. This is year 3 for him in Chicago. He started with Chivas USA. He played in Mexico, won a league title with Tigres down there. Spent a year in Israel before coming to Chicago in 2019. 2 goals and 38 caps for the U.S. men's national team. He's also 36 years old. We'll have to see how he holds up over the course of a season. I think Miguel Angel Navarro, the 22-year-old Venezuelan, will eventually take over for Bornstein at left back. He did play 15 minutes last week 4 or 5 on passes, and he created a chance in that final 15 minutes. Center backs, Francisco Calvo is one of the best in the league. He's just erratic at times. Passing was not good last week, although he did create a chance. He won 6 of his 10 duels. Very good. He's very good in the air. He won 3 of 5 there. A couple of interceptions, cleared 5 times. This is his 3rd year in Chicago after coming over early in the 2019 season from Minnesota. He played in the 2018 World Cup for Costa Rica. He's got over 50 caps for the Ticos. He's paired up, at least last week he was, with Johan Kappelhoff, the 30-year-old center back from the Netherlands, who is starting year 5 in Chicago. Played over 150 times for FC Groningen before coming to Chicago. He's had a lot of injury issues. Technical center back, good passer. He's 26 of 32 last week. He's good on the long ball, 5 of 11. He's just struggled to stay healthy during his time in Chicago. If for some reason there's a change, I would expect Mauricio Pineda, the 23-year-old American, to get the opportunity. He's a homegrown signing, year 2 of his pro career. He was part of the U23 group that failed to qualify for the Olympics, but a very technical player. He led the team in minutes in 2020 as well. I really like Mauricio Pineda, but he did not get the start in week 1 for Rafael Wiki. Carlos Terán, who I mentioned earlier, 20-year-old Colombian, is back training with the team. I would not expect him to start here, but ultimately he will start to get time for the Fire. A Colombian youth international, been part of World Cup qualifying tournaments, been part of the U20 World Cup in 2019. Good bit of experience in the Colombian First Division at a very young age. 20 years old, just got to get healthy. Carlos Terán is a name to keep in mind for the future for the Fire. Probably not for this one. Boris Sekulic, the 29-year-old Slovakian, gets forward really, really well. He had an assist last week, created a couple of chances. 2nd year in Chicago. He's got a couple of caps for Slovakia, but he's a longtime veteran professionally with almost 300 appearances in Serbia, Slovakia, Bulgaria, Poland, in the first divisions in all those countries. Sekulic is a player that if you can pin back and make him have to sit and defend, he's not as effective. If he gets forward into the attack, he's a problem, and he can create opportunities. Sekulic, that right side for Chicago with Sekulic and Frankowski, that battle against Marcelino Moreno and George Bello, if we're looking at projected starters, could determine the outcome of this match. The midfield, I already mentioned it, Gaston Jimenez, Alvaro Madran, Luka Stojanovic, those were your 3 starters. All were excellent. Jimenez was 45 of 50 passing. He drifts out wide. He was perfect 4 of 4 on his crosses. He had 4 shots. He intercepted the ball twice. Over 200 appearances in 10 years in Argentina. He did play one time for Argentina in a friendly before making his one-time FIFA change to play for Paraguay. He's made 1 appearance since the change. He's been called up for World Cup qualifiers. I would expect to see him again this summer for Paraguay in World Cup qualification in CONMEBOL. Alvaro Madran started his career at Real Madrid. He's played for Getafe, Valencia, Alaves, Rayo Vallecano, Spanish Youth International up to the U21 level. This is year 2 for him in Chicago, and he's just so steady. 4 chances created last week, 3 of 7 on the long ball, and was really good on the duels. 8 of 13 duels won, and he won 4 of 5 of his dribbling attempts. Madran is the one that can unbalance the opposition because he picks the right times to get forward. And now being able to play with a guy like Luka Stojanovic, that's going to be some really good chemistry once they play more minutes together. Stojanovic got a goal last week. He created a couple of chances, 25 of 30 on his passes, but he was active defensively. Committed 3 fouls, but he intercepted a couple of times. He had a couple of tackles, won. Spent 3 years in the Serbian First Division before coming to Chicago. He's 27. He's got Europa League experience. He was a goal scorer in his last 2 seasons before coming to Chicago. A goal scorer from the central midfield. You like to have those kinds of players, and Chicago's happy to have Stojanovic back available. Ignacio Aliseda played 24 minutes last week. I don't know if he's going to be on a minutes restriction here, if he can start, if he can go longer than that. He created a chance once he came on as Chicago tried to find a winner late. Good young player, 21-year-old Argentine. He spent his initial years as a pro with Defensa y Justicia in Argentina. Played almost 40 times for them. Got some experience in the Copa Sudamericana. He's also got experience with Argentina's U23s in the Pan American Games in 2019, where they won the gold medal. On the other flank, coming off of a disappointing year last year, Przemysław Frankowski, the 26-year-old winger from Poland, really good last week. 39 of 46 passing, created 4 chances, won 3 free kicks for his side. Played in the Polish First Division for 7 years, started as a teenager before he came over to MLS. He has 10 caps with Poland. He's looking for a big bounce back year because last year was not what people expected out of him. Because of the injury, Chicago had to move Chinonso Offor over to the left wing, primarily a forward. He's 20. He's a young Nigerian player who played the last 2.5 years in Latvia, where he scored double-digit goals in 40 games, 16 goals, 40 games. He's a player who I think is still adjusting to Major League Soccer. He was only 7-19 on his duels last week, but he won 4 of 10 in the air. He did win 3 tackles as well, and being a natural forward, he kind of tucked in at times and gave the left wing up for Bornstein. So if Offor gets the opportunity on the left wing, keep an eye on him kind of pinching in and trying to overload the 2 center backs for Atlanta. And the number 9 for Chicago, he's their number 27 technically, Robert Beric, the 29-year-old Slovenian, had a goal, had an assist, got 5 shots off last week, created 4 chances. I mean, it's about as big of a game as you could ever ask for out of your forward. 22 of 26 passing, he won half of his duels, he won a couple of tackles. He was the second leading scorer in the league last year, his first year in Chicago. He had 12. Over 300 appearances in the first divisions in Slovenia, in Austria, in France before coming to Chicago. 12 goals lifetime in the Europa League. He's got 4 goals lifetime in the Champions League. He's also got a couple of goals in 24 caps for Slovenia. On the Atlanta side, I don't know if we'll see big changes to the lineup. Gabriel Heinze said this week that he's not looking to rotate just to rotate. He'll field the team that he thinks is the best team to get the win against the Fire. I don't know if we'll see a Mikey Ambrose or a Ronald Hernandez give George Bello or Brooks Lennon a break. I guess the biggest question is Alan Franco. Does he immediately come into the lineup, or does he have to kind of bide his time a little bit? Because Anton Walkes has been outstanding in the first 3 games of the season. Gives you a good headache at times in putting together that lineup sheet if you're Gabriel Heinze. Miles Robinson and Walkes and that back line and Santiago Sosa and Brad Gazan, incredible run of clean sheets right now, 4 in a row going back to the CONCACAF Champions League last year. 395 minutes since Atlanta conceded a goal in all competitions. That goes back to Decision Day in Columbus last year. 4th highest tackle success rate in week 1 for Atlanta. They're very active defensively, and that's something that in 2020 was a struggle, and at times in 2019 was a struggle. This is a team that will want to defend as high up the field as possible and make it difficult for Chicago to build up attacks. Last week, Atlanta was also really good as a passing team, second in the league, 88.2% of their passes completed. Anton Walkes has had a perfect 81 of 81 against Alajuelense in CONCACAF Champions League. Miles Robinson is not just making the short, simple passes. He's starting to look further up the field. We know what Santi Sosa can do with that long diagonal that opens the game up. You want to give him those opportunities to pick those passes out. 10 recoveries for Miles against Orlando. A lot of times he'll be that free man, and he'll have to deal with Beric getting free, but also with maybe Offor or Aliseda coming in from the wing. Robinson is essential to Atlanta being able to play as high of a line as they want to. And if you go back and look at the heat map from the Orlando game, this was a pretty high line of where they had the ball, let alone where they were positioned. You often saw Robinson, Walkes, everybody with the exception of Brad Gazan in the attacking half when Atlanta was able to set up shop and control possession there. 80 touches last week for Anton Walkes. That was the most of anybody from Atlanta. 10 crosses from Brooks Lennon, third most in MLS. Pretty successful on the crossing as well. Brooks Lennon will start to pick some players out with these crosses, but 4 of them found a home inside the 18 last week. That's a pretty good percentage to pick out a cross and actually find a teammate inside the penalty area. Brooks getting forward, huge part of this team being able to do what it wants to do. It's still not all the way connecting, though. The attack is a little disjointed. It's going to need time. The defenses are ahead of the offense right now for me, or around the league, but especially here in Atlanta. The good coaches understand, and I think Gabriel Heinze is potentially going to be a great one. What you can control first is building that foundation. You can coach up the way you defend. Attacking play, especially in a positional play element like Atlanta wants to do, you are relying on individuals, you're relying on 1v1s, you're relying on combinations, chemistry, things that are hard to force. Atlanta will find it. They're getting chances. They're getting possession in the final third. They're getting possession in the attacking half. They're not giving up a ton of chances. It's a good start, and it's a good path to be on if you're Gabriel Heinze and Atlanta United right now. There is room for improvement, and it's going to come with playing games. You have to get these games under your belt. And it's not going to be easy over the next week. You got Chicago coming to town, a team that can absolutely come in here and put goals on the board with Robert Beric. You've got Philadelphia coming to town on Tuesday, first leg of the CONCACAF Champions League quarterfinal. That was the Supporter Shield winning team last year, and they have a striker in Kasper Shabilko, who is maybe the only striker in the league who is more complete and well-rounded in terms of goal scoring and goal creating than Robert Beric. Philadelphia also comes in with a pretty unique shape, the 4-4-2 diamond. That's going to be tough to prepare for in just a couple of days. And then it's New England on the weekend before the second leg of going to Chester, PA, and playing the Philadelphia Union. So we're going to learn a lot about who Atlanta United is going to be and who Atlanta United is right now over the next week and a half or so, with 2 games against Philly, 1 against New England, and tomorrow night against Chicago. Cannot wait to hear everybody in the building. Cannot wait to see what it looks like. And can't wait to continue to see this team develop its personality, its philosophy getting fleshed out, and see who emerges and becomes that leader on the field. Is it going to be Santiago Sosa at his age? Is it going to be Marcelino Moreno, kind of a quiet leader? Is it going to be Ezequiel Barco, starting to take on more responsibility in the team? Josef Martinez is always going to have that responsibility, and we know he will be back. He's got the pink hair rocking this weekend. Is that going to unlock Josef Martinez and get him back into a rhythm? Or is it just minutes? Is it just minutes for him? I'm not worried about him physically. I know people are. I'm not. I just want him to get back into a rhythm, get back to where he's anticipating things. One of the more underrated things about Josef Martinez in his career. Reads the game incredibly well, makes the right runs before he needs to, and he ends up in the right spots. Right now, not quite there yet. You want him to arrive for the final ball to put the goal away. He's not quite there yet. Again, time. And you've got a lot of minutes coming up in the next week and a half to build up that time on the field and that time together. Time together in the stands tomorrow as well. Time together preparing for this game. Time together enjoying it. I hope everybody out there has had a good week. I hope everybody out there is excited for Atlanta and Chicago. I can't wait for it. After the game tomorrow night, the Salty Takeaway. John, Jarrett, Nick will give you their thoughts. You can catch the post-game show on Bally Sports South. You can also catch the full-time report on 98.29 The Game, which will be available as a podcast soon after the show is over. Thanks for listening. We'll be back on Monday at some point in the day with the run-up as we get ready for CONCACAF Champions League against the Philadelphia Union. Games are coming fast and furious. We'll try to keep up with all of it and try to get you guys ready for each one of them here on the run-up. Thanks for hanging out. See you tomorrow at the Benz, hopefully, or we'll see you virtually, Bally Sports South and on 92.9 The Game.